Hello, Dr. Godsey. My project is over the legend of La Lechuza. I've always been interested in this myth ever since I was a child, and I decided to do some research and look into it and share it with you. To understand what exactly is the Lechuza, some people say that it's um, depicted as a barn owl. Some people say that it's a great horned owl. But usually it's a barn owl, but it's found in the North American continent, and it weighs not that much, probably over 1 pound, and its wingspan is over 50 inches or so, rounded off. And it's usually seen around abandoned places such as barns or churches, and it hunts at night, which is probably why people get scared of it. Um, unlike Unlike the barn owl, the great horned owl is a little bit bigger, and I've heard that people usually depict La Lechuza around here as the great horned owl, and it's also found in the North American continent, and it's seen around Texas and other states up north. Um, to start to start with, let's look at how the owl became La Lechuza. Its origins can go back to the indigenous people, which is present day Mexico, the Nahua and the Mesoamericans. And the Nahua and the Mesoamericans, they did these rituals and believed that there was no division between good and evil. And they did not see it as they did not see the practices as a bad thing, but as a way of helping out their village and help people get better with medicine recipes. And it was not necessarily considered witchcraft yet. And in these rituals, they included animals, and they saw these animals as spirit guides, and especially birds and owls. They thought these birds were spiritual, and they were messengers of the underworld and spiritual world, and they really thought highly of these birds. And they didn't see anything evil about them or any witchcraft about them until the arrival of the Spanish. Now, the Spaniards, um, when they saw these indigenous people performing these rituals, they immediately thought that it wasn't right, um, because these indigenous people were using sacrifices as an image of using them as a balance between to do good and to help, and and so the Spanish didn't really agree what they were doing, and and so um, they thought these practices were were totally against God, and they just um, thought that it should be eliminated. And so they try to convert the natives to Christianity. And so what that group, when the when that indigenous group tried to convert to Christianity, they mixed in the the practices with the Catholicism. For example, Dia de los Muertos. The Aztec people are big on the Dia de los Muertos, and so the Catholic Church decided to adapt, and the Catholic priest recognized it as a celebration. And so, however, there was a group of indigenous people that did not agree with converting to Christianity, and they were completely separate from that group, and they wanted to continue their practices and their rituals. Well, according to the Christian Spaniards, their practices were paganistic. Um, they weren't seen as acceptable, in other words. And so, when the Spanish Inquisition came, they decided to eliminate these people, and decided to completely shun them out or execute them. And um, and so, but those people that didn't want to convert to Christianity wanted to um, continue to practice because they didn't want to have anything to do with Christianity. And so in that group, you had people who were accused of sorcery and witchcraft, and these people were accused of being shapeshifters, and they were thought to be as having a pact with the devil. And so you have the Nawahuali, which is a sorcerer. Um, uh, they would turn into a shape, any shape of an animal, or such as the um, tecolote, the owl, um, in which they turn into this uh, owl that we know today as La Lechuza. And so it can be either a man or a woman, and the Catholic Church saw this, I guess, rumor that it's not acceptable to practice what they believe, and so the Catholic Church just shunned it. And so, what we know today, um, from that source, the La Lechuza legend came about. And so it's popular, of course, in Mexico and in the United States, preferably around Texas and some certain areas of the Southwest. And it supposedly, the La Lechuza is depicted as mainly a woman who was wrong in life, and usually she's accused of being a witch. And so a couple of versions are around. One version is from Mexico. There's this, the story goes, there's a lady, she lived on the outskirts of town, and she practiced the good magic, not the black magic. And she helped the townspeople, with her medicine recipes. And of course, the townspeople or the Catholic Church did not like it. And so she was executed. And as revenge, she turned into a shape-shifting being, which is the owl, and La Lechuza. And she haunted that town, and she went after the townspeople, mostly men, and people who wronged her. Now, another version that I never heard of until recently, when I came across my research, is this version. This version is usually told around the Rio Grande Valley. I never heard of this one. This version of La Lechuza, she's a spirit of the mother whose children got killed by a drunk driver. And she turns into La Lechuza, and she goes after drunk men, and she hangs out around the bars and clubs, and she hunts them, goes after them or attacks them or kills them, and to get revenge for her children. And also, she's found in fictional stories. For example, I found this book in the archives upstairs in the library called La Lechuza Cuentos de Mi Barrio de Alonso Perales. It was a pretty interesting. It's completely in Spanish. I found this story very interesting. It's a chapter um, called Violeta. I found it very interesting because it's about a little girl. She's an outcast among the kids, her neighborhood kids, and she likes to play by herself. And so the neighborhood witch approaches her, and she makes her a deal, saying that she can make her beautiful and rich if she exchanges her soul with her. And so at first, the little girl is kind of skeptical, but then she eventually agrees. And so she becomes beautiful and rich, and the town's people love her. All her friends, new friends, love her. But then one day, somebody sees her talking to the witch at her house, and automatically, word gets around town that she's doing some deal with the witch, and she's once again becomes an outcast. And so the little girl, Violeta, doesn't like being shunned, or like she's feeling down, and so she goes back to the witch, and she tells her the deal is off. I'm not going to give you my soul, and of course the witch gets mad, and she gets upset, and she goes, the deal is no, a deal is a deal. We can't break that deal, and your soul is mine. And so she turns into this owl, and she attacks the little girl and tries to drink her blood and tries to kill her and take her soul. But luckily, the little girl escapes. And as the little girl looks back, the owl, the witch, is in the form of an owl, withers away, and she's looks like she's deteriorating, which I thought was really interesting. And of course, um, this is my favorite part of hearing about La Lechuza. Um, a long time ago, when I was probably in high school, I remember this teacher telling us about how there was a La Lechuza sighting in Robstown, Texas, and she remembers hearing it in the news and or radio, and she was telling us that there was a big bird, and people thought it was La Lechuza. Um, but I was reading and doing research, and it turns out that the cops came out saying that it was all a hoax. It was a trick. It was fake. But they did it because they wanted to distract people and decrease the crime, and make people like go to church and start praying, and just to decrease the crime, and just to create a distraction, because it was just there was no need for people to believe that it was for just to believe that it was a hoax. So anyway, a group of teenagers created this mannequin looking bird, and put a human looking head on it. And so the authorities went along saying that it was just fake. There's no big bird. There's no La Lechuza. Nothing. But however, people in Robstown, of course, still believed that there was still the La Lechuza sightings. It spread out. The rumor spread out to the Banquete, to Alice, and all the way to the valley too. And so even there's this Tejano group called Los Campeones. They made a song called El Pájaro Gigante de Robe, and it's about the big bird. How those people saw the big bird, And of course, they believe it. They still believe it. And I thought that was really neat to hear about. But of course, authorities said that it was fake, but not to believe it. But according to some people, they still believe. And of course, I've interviewed some people a while back, and they told me their stories back then. But then I contacted them again, and they uh, they retold their stories to me, um, and they told me details about how they encountered this big bird, La Lechuza. My former boss, Veronica Martinez, she said that a long time ago, when she was smaller, like 12, she was out on her family ranch and she encountered this big, great horned owl. She said they had big eyes, big yellow, glowing eyes, and it scared her, it terrified her, and it attacked her. And she remembers feeling the talons scratch her, and she remembers that it made like a really loud screech, really loud screech. She couldn't describe it, but it scared her, it terrified her. Well, the next day, she started to feel sick. She started to feel real sick, and um, so she started to think that who somebody cursed her. Somebody cursed her, and she started thinking who and who, and she thinks it was probably a family member that probably cursed her that she was fighting with. And so that's her story of the La Lechuza getting attacked, and it just terrified her to this day. My next interview was my coworker, Gilbert Garcia. Um, he said that when he was 17, he saw an owl outside his window. He heard hooting, and then he looked out the window, and it was a an owl with horns. He said it had little horns and glowing eyes, and it didn't stop hooting. It didn't stop making that noise, and he wanted to shoo it away, but he was scared it was going to attack him. And of course, like he just closed the curtain and just said a prayer, and then, but the next day he said that he had gotten into a car wreck, and he had problems with the insurance. He said that he started having all this bad luck, and he says, it just had to be La Lechuza. It just had to be her. That's what he had told me, and so he thinks that maybe it was his ex stepmother-in-law, because she was always so mean to him, and he thinks that maybe she sent the lechuza to him, and so he says it had to be her, and so it scares him to this day, and I could tell he was scared in his face. But yeah, that's his story. One story that freaks me out to this day, it scares me, that I still can't get over. Um, my friend Eric Velasquez um, had a newborn baby girl, and he said that he had a bad dream, a nightmare, um, of a young girl tapping on his window, and she told him in the dream that she wanted his baby, and that she'll give him money. And she didn't leave him alone. She kept banging on the window, and then finally he woke up from that bad dream, and he just was terrified. But he didn't talk about it for at least a couple of weeks. And then some time had passed, and he said that there was a hooting owl that landed on the fence, and it didn't stop hooting. It didn't stop. It started just staring at him through the window, and it didn't want to leave, and it was just there. And then the next night it was there again, and it didn't stop hooting. It didn't stop staring at him. And so he remembers his mom saying that if you ever encounter La Lechuza, get a pair of scissors and put it under the pillow, and then start saying a prayer and get holy water. And then sure enough, the next night the owl was gone. He didn't come, or her, it didn't come back. And he's not sure, like, if it was a coincidence, if it was really La Lechuza, or just a coincidence that the owl was just there. And so till this day, he believes that it was La Lechuza. And so here's my experience with the La Lechuza. One night I was coming home while I was leaving work at 3 a.m. from the hospital, and I saw the great horned owl. It had big eyes, had big yellow eyes, had its little horns, and I could tell it was a great horned owl, and it was pretty big, and I had never been that close to an owl before, and I remember hearing the hooting, and then I looked up, and it was just staring straight at me at 3 a.m. and the witching hour or so, what they say. And I remember that it was just there, and then, but no, it didn't attack. It didn't attack me. It didn't. No, I don't know. I thought it was just, maybe it is La Lechuza. Maybe it is. Too bad I didn't have a camera phone back then, but I remember that it didn't really do anything to me. So I got in my car and just drove off. But still, it was just looking at me, getting to my car, and but I didn't know what to think of it. So I didn't have any bad luck, or I didn't have any crazy stories to tell. But from these people's experiences, I can tell that they really believe that La Lechuza is bad. But from my experience, I couldn't say, but I can tell that this bird is a big part of the Mexican American community, especially in Robstown, where people probably still believe. They still believe that it's real. It's not fake. Of course, my 3 acquaintances know that they believe that it's not real. That it is real. I'm sorry, but yeah, that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.